While I was putting up spring festival couplets, I took a hard fall and got transmigrated into a cultivation world. I couldn't recognize a single word during the entrance exam and ended up becoming a menial disciple. Who would have thought that after auditing one talisman class, I'd turn into the Vice Sect Master? Everyone surrounded me with smiling faces, wanting to know why the talismans I drew were so absurdly powerful. I was filled with endless emotion. My language arts teacher who forced me to practice calligraphy. Your kindness is as vast as the heavens. Who could have thought that the secret method of talisman making in this world is actually writing Chinese characters? On the first day of the new year, I transmigrated into a cultivation world. The system gave me a main quest: draw divine talismans and become a divine talisman master. Step 1. Participate in the entrance exam for Daqingshan's Yufu Sect. The moment I opened the test paper, I fell into deep thought. This world spoke Chinese, but its written language looked like Martian script. I couldn't understand a thing. After turning in a blank paper, I became a glorious menial disciple. Every day, I chopped firewood, carried water, swept the grounds, and tended the fire. At night, though, with lofty ambitions in my heart, I refused to lie flat and struggled to learn how to read under the moonlight. Thankfully, the sect provided food and lodging, and they even handed out new clothes during the new year. So, life was simple and fulfilling. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the year again. From the moment I woke up today, I was in an especially good mood. After finishing my work early, I hummed a little tune and headed for the lecture hall. After waiting all this time, my application to audit talisman classes had finally been approved. After my identity Jade token was checked, I stopped in front of the lecture hall. Not long after, more than 10 teenage boys and girls walked in as well. They were all wearing the same green robes. They were newly admitted, formal disciples. The whole group looked at me in unison, their faces full of curiosity. Ahem, ahem. 2 soft coughs rang out as an instructor in white robes arrived in front of us. The boys and girls immediately quieted down. At the instructor's prompting glance, I walked over and stood beside them. Today, he'll demonstrate how to draw a fire talisman. Watch carefully. He waved his sleeve lightly, and paper and brushes flew out from inside the lecture hall, landing precisely in every disciple's hand. Remember, the essence of the talisman path is communication. You convey your intent and commands to the vital energy spread throughout heaven and earth, but you can only do it in a way it understands. I watched the instructor's brush movements with complete concentration as he drew the talisman. With a few quick strokes, talisman patterns appeared on the paper in his hand. Wait! Why did those patterns look so familiar? As the final stroke fell, red light flashed across the page, and the talisman paper vanished. A ball of flame instantly appeared in the palm where he held the talisman. Then he closed his hand, and the flame disappeared. I stared from the side, a little dumbfounded. What he had just drawn on the talisman paper, wasn't that the character for fire? I got excited. The talisman patterns used to mobilize the vital energy of heaven and earth were actually the thing I was most familiar with: Chinese characters. At that moment, the disciples began trying it for themselves. They awkwardly drew the shape of the character, fire, on their talisman paper, crooked and twisted, all weird looking. Before long, red light flared everywhere, and fireballs, big and small, rose up. I suppressed the excitement in my heart, focused my mind, picked up the brush, and steadily wrote the character, fire, on the talisman paper. The strokes were forceful, and the handwriting was neat. In an instant, a pillar of fire expanded in my hand and shot straight into the sky. The fire pillar exploded in midair, and the blast made my head buzz. I rubbed my ears and looked around. Everyone was staring at me in unison, dumbstruck, with talisman brushes dropping all over the ground. The instructor didn't even continue the lesson. He directly brought me to the peak of Daqingshan to meet the sect master. The sect master was an old man with a white beard, meditating in a quiet chamber. After hearing the instructor's account, he stroked his beard and came to stand before me. He told me to draw another fire talisman. Just as I was about to start, the instructor stopped me with one hand and had me move outside. A moment later, flames soared into the sky from Daqingshan's main peak. Then, a huge explosion echoed through the surrounding valleys for a long time without fading. Crack! The old sect Master's hand, which had been stroking his beard, suddenly trembled, and he yanked off a tuft of white whiskers. He reached out and tightly clamped my wrist. What kind of secret art is this? Why does this fire talisman possess such divine power? Before I could answer, several figures came flying over from all directions. The peak masters from the other peaks had seen the firelight from the summit and come to investigate. While saluting, they looked around in shock. The old man impatiently waved them aside and told them to spread out. Then he got into position and wanted to compete with me in talisman arts. I instantly got nervous. What did he mean by directly starting a spell fight? At least teach me how to activate a talisman first. Hey, after I draw the talisman, what am I supposed to do? Throw it at you? Or does it move on its own? The old man on the other side said nothing and heartlessly started drawing his talisman. At once, a great wind began to rise. I couldn't just sit there and wait to die, so I had no choice but to write against the wind. Woo! The fiercer the wind got, the more down my heart felt. His wind clearly countered fire talismans. I had to switch to something safer. In an instant, all kinds of characters flashed through my mind like a slideshow. This was the one. I immediately started writing at top speed. The old man's talisman paper suddenly erupted with a violent current of air, carrying countless sharp blades as it rushed toward me. I pressed down and finished the stroke. Emerald light flowed across the talisman paper, and a single character, Forest, stood vividly upon it. The current of air before me instantly froze. In the next moment, the character, Forest, came alive. Tiny saplings sprouted one after another from the strokes on the talisman paper. The saplings grew wildly in the wind. Their roots plunged firmly into the earth, and their branches twisted and stretched out, tightly connecting with the surrounding limbs. With a sharp rustle, all the leaves on every tree unfurled at the same time, forming a wall of trees like a green barrier. It stood in front of me. The gale swept over with a howl and crashed into the dense forest. Then it vanished without a trace, like a mud ox sinking into the sea. The old man was dumbfounded. The spectators were dumbfounded. I was dumbfounded, too, condensing energy into spirit form. This is a high-grade spirit talisman. The old sect master's voice trembled, and a sharp light burst from his cloudy eyes. The people around us immediately broke into exclamations. The old man strode forward and stuffed the jade brush in his hand into mine. Very good. Starting today, I will accept a disciple on behalf of my master. You peak masters, hurry over here and greet the new Sect master. Ding! The system's voice rang by my ear. Main quest completed 20%. Single character spirit talisman power increased by 50%. Skill unlock multi-character spirit talisman. In one morning, I went from a menial disciple to the number 2 figure of Yufu Sect. Open my woodshed door, sit on my straw bed, take off my servant robe, put on my sect master's robes. Mom, I've made it. From now on, I, Liang Tianqi, swear to protect Yufu Sect to the death. After stepping out of the room, the sect master took me back to the mountaintop and entered a secret chamber. The whole chamber was covered by a glowing white barrier. Inside, rows upon rows of scrolls were neatly arranged on shelves. He undid the barrier, turned to look at me, and his gaze burned intensely. Junior brother, these scrolls are the sect's treasured high-grade spirit talismans, but during the calamity of the demonic sect, their talisman patterns were damaged and became hard to recognize. Junior brother, your talent is extraordinary. Come, take a close look. Perhaps you can restore one or two. I walked over to the shelf, carefully pulled out a scroll, and spread it open on the desk. The paper was scorched black, the ink blurred, and a huge chunk was missing. I couldn't help leaning closer to examine it carefully. Unexpectedly, I made a mistake in my haste. My jade brush shook, and a drop of ink fell. A huge patch of the scroll was stained. Crack! That familiar snapping sound came from behind me. The sect master rushed over in one stride, his hand trembling as he lightly brushed the paper's surface. He was angry and panicked at the same time. His lips quivered, and he looked unbelievably aggrieved, feeling apologetic. I spoke to comfort him. Sect Master, Senior, Brother, I know you're anxious, but don't be anxious yet. I've already recognized what's written on the scroll. Just watch me complete it. After saying that, I pressed down the old man's hand as it rubbed over the paper. Then I followed the original traces of ink and wrote 4 large characters. Dragon soars, tiger roars. As I wrote, a powerful aura began surging over the scroll. The sect master quickly pulled out the hand I had been pressing and took a seal from his robes, stamping it onto the scroll. The rolling aura quickly condensed into thousands of strands and was completely absorbed into the scroll. The old man held the restored scroll against his face, tears streaming down his cheeks. I patted his shoulder in comfort. Without stopping, I got up and pulled another scroll from the shelf. This one says, "Oh, a drizzling evening. Rain sprinkles the river sky. Is this for watering fields?" I picked up the brush and began writing, and the old man hurried over to stamp it. Then I pulled out another scroll. "A great wind rises, and the clouds fly." I kept writing, and he followed behind me, stamping without pause. A J laugh began echoing through the chamber. It was honestly kind of creepy. 2 hours later, I rubbed my aching wrist and quickly walked out of the chamber. At some point, heavy snow had started falling outside. The world was blanketed in white, and the open ground in front of the building was still packed with people, all wearing expectant expressions. The old sect master walked out behind me, with his hands behind his back. He stood on the steps and slowly looked around. Then his eyes curved, and he nodded heavily. The crowd around us burst into cheers. No matter whether they wore white or green robes, they all excitedly threw their arms around each other. It looked exactly like the thrilling scene of a crowd counting down together in a public square on New Year's Eve. The old sect master's emotion surged as he lifted his neck and loudly announced, "The sect's treasured collection has been restored, and tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Double happiness has arrived. So tonight, we will all make dumplings together." That night, the entire Yufu Sect gathered for a feast at the dinner table. The old man proudly told me all about the sect's history. Yufu Sect stood alone in the southwest of the continent, stretching for 1,000 miles. It was one of the 6 orthodox great sects. 100 years ago came the calamity of the demonic sect. The 6 great sects joined forces and drove the demonic army back into the land of eternal night, pulling the cultivation world back from the brink of collapse. That battle dealt a devastating blow to Yufu Sect. Secret manuals were destroyed, and talented geniuses were lost. Over the following decades, the sect gradually declined. In recent years, news of demonic sect activity had surfaced from time to time in various regions. The entire cultivation world was uneasy, and Yufu Sect was the first to bear the brunt of it. As the sect master spoke, he kept trying to inspire me. "Junior, brother, our sect hasn't taken first place in the Talisman Arts tournament for a full 100 years. With your help, Yufu Sect finally has hope this time." The more he spoke, the more excited he became, and the hand stroking his beard started to tremble. "In recent years, I've been so worried about the demonic sect making a comeback that I couldn't sleep. My hair is almost gone. Good thing you appeared out of nowhere," I thought to myself. "If your hand keeps shaking like that, your beard will be gone too." Senior, brother, I've eaten well, slept well, and lived happily in the sect. If anyone dares come cause trouble, I'll write them to death. We talked happily together, and the meal was full of warmth and laughter. After the meal, I was about to head down the mountain to sleep when someone stopped me. They said a room had already been arranged for me on the main peak, and I could just rest there. But I'm picky about beds, so I still insisted on going back to sleep. With troubled looks, they told me that New Year's Eve was close, and with the heavy snow falling, the ancient Nian Beast would definitely come out to forage, since it wouldn't be able to find food deep in the mountains. Going down the mountain late at night would be far too dangerous, so it would be better for me to stay. The moment I heard that, I got tense too. The Nian Beast. I'd heard of it before transmigrating. That was a ferocious beast. In this world, it was probably even more terrifying. I remembered that setting off firecrackers and hanging red paper during the new year were meant to ward it off. I decisively chose to stay overnight. To be safe, it was necessary to put up a pair of spring festival couplets to ward off evil. I asked for read talisman paper, thought for a moment, and then lifted my brush to write. With one blast of firecrackers, the old year departs with peach talismans in all forms. The new spring arrives. Firecrackers and peach talismans. The buff was maxed out after I put them up. I went to sleep in the middle of the night. I was sleeping soundly when a low growl outside woke me up. Part dragon's cry and part tiger's roar. Then the whole house shook once, and after that, everything went still again. I was just too tired, so I turned over and went back to sleep. The next morning, I got up and opened the door. A row of disciples was lying outside the entrance, and beside them was a giant beast sprawled on the ground with eyes like bronze bells, a blue face, savage fangs, and a single horn on its head. I quickly stepped over the threshold, went outside, and helped each of them up. Thankfully, they had only been immobilized and weren't seriously hurt. It turned out that the Nian Beast had really come to my door looking for food the previous night, but the moment it reached my entrance, it was suppressed by the couplets. The patrolling disciples had heard the commotion and come to investigate, only to be suppressed indiscriminately too and frozen there for half the night. I carefully walked over to the Nian Beast. Its entire body was pinned tightly into the snow, trembling non-stop, while its mouth made a vague Nian sound. It looked confused and at a loss. It didn't resemble an ancient ferocious beast at all. It looked more like a stray cat that had been abandoned. I crouched down and was just about to pet it when something flashed with a gray light between the pads of its left front paw. I shifted over for a closer look. A strange bone was lodged in its paw, and the spot was swollen high. I pinched the exposed half of the bone, and with a pop, pulled out a broken bone about half a foot long. A puff of black smoke rose from the Nian Beast's wound. Its body gave a violent shudder, but it had no intention of attacking me. It just lay there quietly, as if it understood I was helping it. I formed a spell and cast a water spirit talisman. The paper gave off a gentle blue light and slowly wrapped around the Nian Beast's wound. After a while, the black smoke dissipated and the wound slowly healed. The Nian Beast revealed a grateful expression and began rubbing its head against me. At the same time, the system's voice sounded in my mind. Successfully bound, ancient divine beast. Nian! I was so happy I boldly started petting it, completely unaware that the broken bone in my other hand had turned into a cloud of black smoke and drifted away along the mountain ridge. The Nian Beast instantly turned cute and clingy. It kept nudging my hand and asking me to ride it. The moment I swung onto its back, wings sprouted from its body and it flew into the air. Honestly, being carried around by an ancient divine beast felt unbelievably awesome. Everyone on the ground was completely stunned. Throughout the entire history of cultivation, there had never been a precedent of taming an ancient divine beast. Our vice sect master was truly a god among men, but the image of the Nian Beast as a savage and violent monster was just too deeply rooted in everyone's mind. So, even through their shock, they were still full of fear toward it. To help everyone get used to the Nian Beast as soon as possible, over the next several days, I voluntarily took on the task of delivering new clothes to the entire sect and rode it all over the 1,000-mile sect grounds. Many years later, the men, women, old, and young of the sect still remembered that wonderful spring festival when the continent's only divine Talisman Master rode the Nian Beast door to door, delivering new clothes. When I came back, rubbing my sore butt, I discovered that the open-air schoolhouse I had asked to be built was finished. The demonic sect was watching like a tiger, eyeing its prey. Literacy in Chinese characters was an urgent matter. It was time for me to start teaching. These days, I had gained a deeper understanding of the rules governing magical power in this world. When a talisman art was used, the vital energy of heaven and earth would be mobilized and arranged in an orderly combination according to the talisman patterns, which were Chinese characters, to form the corresponding spell technique. Just being able to write wasn't enough. To bring out the full power of talisman arts, one had to understand the meaning behind the characters while drawing them, combining both form and spirit. But no matter what, writing and practicing calligraphy were still the most basic of all basics. For the first lesson, I brought out the classic beginner's copybook, Shang Da Ren, Kong Yi Ji, Hua, San Qian, Qi, Shi, Er, Xiao Sheng, Bei, Ju, Zi, Jia, Zuo, Ren, Qi, Li Yi. This was a tracing copybook children had used to learn writing from the Tang dynasty all the way to the Qing dynasty. Nothing could be more suitable for teaching them from the ground up. But even these mere 25 characters were too much for the disciples of Yufu Sect. Kong, Yi, Hua, San Gan, Qi, Shi, Tuesday, Bei, Zhu were everywhere. I could only stare and call out, "Good Lord." I immediately stopped the tracing practice, turned around, and wrote a huge Yang character on a scroll. Learning characters directly was still too advanced. I decided to start with teaching brushstrokes first. Breaking down the strokes produced remarkable teaching results. The disciples' eyes shone brightly, as if the door to a whole new world had opened. Among them, Sect Master Senior Brother had the highest comprehension. Before the class even ended, he had already written a decent fire spirit talisman. Soon after, flames shot up all over the classroom. His face was charred black, and his beard had been burned clean off. Yet, he was completely unaware, standing there, laughing nonstop with tears streaming down his face. From that point on, a frenzy of calligraphy practice swept through the entire Yufu Sect. Every disciple forgot food and sleep, practicing their writing tirelessly, and their talisman arts improved with each passing day. As for me becoming their vice sect master at such a young age, everyone was finally and completely convinced. Every night, when I returned home, all kinds of food, accessories, and little gifts would be piled up at my door. The room was always spotless and bright, with fresh seasonal fruit set out on the table at all times. The whole sect was using its own way to express gratitude to me. A month passed in the blink of an eye, and the day of the Talisman Arts Tournament arrived. This year's tournament was being held at Yufu Sect. Sect Master Senior Brother went into seclusion to practice calligraphy, so the task of leading the group fell to me. On the second day of the second month, when the dragon raises its head, the Nian Beast swelled with energy, grew giant wings, became enormous, and carried me along with the disciples as we flew toward Yufu Sect. Yufu Sect was located at Daliang Mountain in the northernmost part of the continent, and the journey was long. Long-distance flight was boring, but fortunately, I got to hear quite a bit of gossip about the old sect master and Yufu Sect's female sect master along the way. When we neared the place, I had the Nian Beast land at the foot of the mountain, so we wouldn't be too shocking. We walked up the mountain and enjoyed the scenery along the way. The mountains and rivers of the northern lands were broad and bold. They had less delicate beauty and more magnificent grandeur. In the mountain hollows, farmers busily worked the precious patches of flat land. A familiar aura radiated from them, and the same warm smiles shone on their faces. As we walked among them, everyone unconsciously stopped talking, and each person's heart was filled with peace. But that peace vanished the moment we reached the mountain gate of Yufu Sect. Yufu Sect's senior brother was waiting there. He looked like a giant goose, head held high and chest puffed out with pride. The way he looked at us was like he was inspecting a bunch of little country kids who had come to visit relatives. "Welcome to all of you who have come from afar. I hope you gained something from this trip." The contempt in his voice was completely undisguised, as if we had already lost. I laughed in anger. Since transmigrating here, I had never seen anyone so arrogant and rude. The disciples beside me clenched their fists and were about to talk back, but at a glance from me, they suppressed themselves. Now wasn't the time for a battle of pride. Wednesday settle things properly in the arena. The Talisman Arts Tournament was held once every 10 years. Its purpose was to temper the new generation and stay prepared at all times for an invasion by the demonic sect. The sect that placed first would gain custody of the jade plaque that forever guards mountains and rivers, and legend said the plaque contained clues to becoming a divine talisman master. More importantly, if the demonic sect invaded, that jade plaque could command the entire cultivation world, and no one would be allowed to disobey. The rules of the competition were simple. Opponents were decided by drawing lots, and every pair fought one unknown. The winner advanced to the next round until a single final victor was decided. As the team leader of my sect, I didn't compete. Instead, I climbed onto the high platform and sat to watch alongside the various silver-haired sect masters. Every major sect had transmission arrays, so the news that Yufu Sect had promoted a menial disciple to vice sect master was already known to everyone. But seeing how young I was, they couldn't help showing strange looks and intentionally or unintentionally ignoring me. Naturally, I was happy to have the peace. I sat down alone and watched the matches with full attention. In the first match, our youngest junior sister drew Yufu Sect's giant goose. The little girl showed no mercy. She brought out the fire spirit talisman she had practiced to perfection, and the giant goose instantly turned into roast goose. The whole arena went silent. Only our team in front burst into cheers. Little junior sister walked off the stage with a bright smile. Yufu Sect's senior brother was carried away on a stretcher, still giving off steam. From that point on, the cheers from Yufu Sect's side only grew louder and louder as the sun tilted westward. Two disciples from Yufu Sect met in the finals, and there was no longer any suspense in this talisman arts tournament. On the third day of the second month in the Jiakan year of the Taichu calendar, after 100 years away, the jade plaque that forever guards mountains and rivers returned to Dakingshan. The strength Yufu Sect displayed shocked every sect present. Not a single sect master dared show even the slightest disrespect anymore. They all got to their feet and surrounded me in a tight circle, smiling from ear to ear as they asked for advice. The 6 cultivation sects were branches from the same tree. I took out the teaching scroll and passed on the 8 principles of Yang to them without holding anything back. The sect masters all treated it like a priceless treasure and kept grabbing me with endless questions about the key points. Right at that moment, a disciple hurried up to the crowd and interrupted the conversation. Vice Sect Master Liang, urgent report. The demonic sect army has launched a surprise attack on Yufu Sect. The entire Dakingshan region has been surrounded. The demonic sect likely has tens of thousands of troops. My heart tightened, and I quickly walked out of the crowd and loudly called for our sect's disciples to gather. Then, with a thought, the Nian Beast came rushing over and lifted me onto its back. Once all the disciples had jumped on, green light flashed in my hand. The character, Swift, flew into the Nian Beast's body. It suddenly vanished, racing straight toward Dakingshan like a bolt of lightning. Cultivation required tempering the heart. Without tempering, there was no Tao. Some people underwent hardship and breakthrough. Some let inner demons grow and fell into Qi deviation. The members of the demonic sect had originally all been extremely clever cultivators. They clearly knew that only by tempering themselves with patience and advancing step by step could they walk the proper path. But they never took the proper path because it was too hard. They only wanted shortcuts, and in the end their Tao hearts were extinguished, and they fell into the demonic path. Examples like that could be seen in every sect. Every time the old man spoke of it, he would be heartbroken and tell me to take it as a warning. To be honest, when I heard that some people could have their cultivation surge overnight after falling into demonhood, I had been a little tempted. But when I returned to Dakingshan and stood on the peak looking over the demonic remnants spread across the mountains and fields, my heart immediately became still as water. What the hell were these things? They were way too ugly, weren't they? So becoming demonic wasn't a distortion of the soul. It was the collapse of your looks. The demonic army had come too suddenly, so the old sect master had no choice but to immediately bring all the common people in the region into the mountain-protecting Grand Array and turtle up in defense. He had held out bitterly, exhausting nearly all of his natal spirit essence, and using one precious scroll after another. The array was on the verge of collapse by the time we returned. I looked around. Outside the Grand Array, everywhere the demonic sect had passed was now a landscape of ruined walls and collapsed buildings. Demonic clouds swirled, forests had withered, and streams had dried up. Rage surged through my heart. At that moment, the leading fiend stepped out. It had twin horns on its head, lumps all over its body, and a huge, clumsy frame like Godzilla. It first burst into loud laughter, and then opened its mouth to speak. Like hell, I was in the mood to listen to its bullshit. I reached out, took the jade plaque that forever guards mountains and rivers, and started drawing a talisman. The sky was violently torn apart. Streak after streak of multicolored light pierced through the demonic clouds and descended from the heavens, instantly sweeping away the shadows that covered the land. When the light poured over the demonic army, black Qi immediately spilled out of their bodies, and wails filled the air. The sneer vanished from the leading fiend's face, replaced by clear fear on its ugly features. My brush never stopped. My aura surged like a flood through my chest, crashing through my limbs and bones with nowhere to go. The fiend realized the terror of what was about to happen. Flames rose in its eyes as it let out a sky-shaking roar and charged at me with all its strength. The jade plaque in my hand had already become so hot it was hard to hold, and the aura in my chest had reached its limit. I could no longer suppress it. As I wrote wildly, I chanted with all my might, "Heaven and earth have righteous Qi, mixed and given form in all things. Below it becomes rivers and mountains. Above it becomes sun and stars. In man it is called noble spirit, vast enough to fill the dark heavens." My voice echoed through the mountains as an indescribable power burst from my body. The colors of heaven and earth dimmed for a moment, then instantly became incomparably vivid. The whole world was redrawn in that single instant. The demonic army let out shrill howls as their bodies collapsed and turned to ash. It was just like when all the birds have eaten their fill and fly back to the woods, leaving behind nothing but a vast white earth, clean and empty. Only after the black Qi in the valley had dispersed did I finally relax and let out a long breath. That was when I realized the power in my body had long since been exhausted, and waves of dizziness hit my head. Just then, a pile of ashes that had been lying still suddenly began to tremble, and that fiend abruptly rolled out of the flying ash. Its whole body was charred black from the scorching, but it was still absurdly fast as it lunged at me. Everyone surged forward and activated defensive talismans. Spiritual light of every color flashed in front of me. A trace of cunning flashed through the fiend's eyes, as if it had expected this all along. Its body twisted, and it turned toward the old sect master, who had exhausted all his spirit essence. The old man had no power left to resist, and was grabbed in one hand, tucked under the fiend's arm. The disciples were horrified. They aimed at the fiend and unleashed their strongest talismans one after another. A chain of explosions erupted across the fiend's back, and both horns on its head were blasted off. But it never looked back. It kept chanting a demonic spell as violent currents of air began swirling around it, and a vortex gate wrapped in demonic clouds appeared out of nowhere. The fiend entered the vortex with the sect master in its grasp, and its body was swallowed by darkness as it disappeared. The vortex gate rapidly began shrinking shut. For 100 years, no one had known where the demonic sect was located. If I wanted to save the old man, this was the only chance. I raised the jade plaque and traced in the air. The character instant was complete. In a flash, my figure disappeared, and at the last moment, before the vortex gate fully closed, I blinked. Inside, alone, I arrived at the location of the demonic sect, the land of eternal night. The instant I stabilized myself, I immediately sensed something was wrong. I stretched both hands into the air, and my heart clenched as sweat the size of beans dripped down my forehead. There wasn't a single trace of the vital energy of heaven and earth here. This place was not somewhere I could stay for long. But without the vital energy of heaven and earth, talisman arts couldn't be used. Right now, I was no different from an ordinary mortal. A chill hit me. I stamped my feet and activated my natal spirit essence to ward off the cold. The ground beneath my feet felt like a mixture of ice and stone. This was a frozen wasteland. At that moment, in the endless darkness, only one distant area gave off a cold glow. I groped my way toward it. It was an iceberg, and at its peak, there was a faint glimmer of light. A person seemed to be frozen inside. My heart tightened, and I ran over, slipping. Who knew how many times, desperately climbing to the top. I pressed my face against the ice and looked in. Inside was the old sect master. His eyes were shut, his life force weak. Only a sliver of natal spirit essence still glimmered, protecting his heart meridians. I forced spirit essence out of my body and turned it into blazing light, trying to melt the ice. But it was like a cup of water on a burning cart. I used up more than half my spirit essence, and the ice had only melted a shallow layer. Panic started rising in my heart. In one careless step, I tripped over a faintly raised block of ice and crashed hard onto the freezing ground. Right then, lying flat on my back, I noticed the starlight shining in the sky. The land of eternal night had no sunlight, and without sunlight there was no natural cycle and no elemental exchange. That was why the vital energy of heaven and earth here was so difficult to produce and so easy to dissipate. But stars were really just the suns next door. That meant starlight was sunlight too. With that thought. I gathered my courage, stood up, and then bowed and prostrated myself toward the starry sky. Then I began using the jade plaque to form a talisman. If anyone had seen it, they definitely would have thought I'd gone mad from desperation. No one had ever used natal spirit essence to cast a talisman in a place completely devoid of the vital energy of heaven and earth. It was no different from suicide. But just because things had always been done a certain way, did that make it right? I had once seen the most magnificent starry sky on Earth. I knew that above this vault were hundreds of billions of galaxies. They were all clusters of starfire. A single spark can start a prairie fire. The starfire starts a prairie fire. Talisman was complete. Talisman light bloom, wrapped in a ball of brilliant light. The jade plaque flew from my hand, pierced straight into the heavens, and finally turned into a single point before disappearing. Right after that, the sky quietly began to awaken. One by one, the stars came. The countless stars covering the sky began to flicker together in a wondrous shared rhythm. Every pulse of light and darkness felt like the whole sky was taking vast, majestic breaths. On the final breath, the sky drew in the starlight deeply, then spat out violently. The starlight gathered into a giant sphere that covered the heavens, giving birth to thunder. Then, Antiway, suddenly, endless thunder carrying incomparable energy smashed this darkness apart. The land of eternal night shone as bright as day. The filthy oil-black mire was ignited by the starfire, and blazing flames spread across the entire frozen plain. The iceberg began to melt, and the old man's body slowly emerged from the ice. I thrust my hand into the ice and pulled him out. The old man's eyelids trembled, and he slowly woke up. Rumble. A muffled roar came from beneath our feet. The entire iceberg began melting and collapsing, and the prairie fire formed a fierce cyclone, pulling bursts of air currents from the melting ice. That was the familiar taste of the vital energy of heaven and earth. So it had all been frozen here. I had just helped the old man to the foot of the mountain when the iceberg finally shattered apart, and a crack suddenly appeared in the ground. The crack widened bit by bit, like the gates of hell slowly opening. A gigantic figure rose from the flames. What kind of body was this? It looked as if countless ugly fiends had been mercilessly stitched together. Massive and grotesque, it radiated the stench of decay and death. It had no neck. Its tumor-like head was embedded in a body made of severed limbs and broken arms, covered in eyes of all sizes, whose gazes were full of fanaticism and cruelty. Very good indeed. What a spirit talisman! The vital energy of this place was sealed. Breaking the restriction through spellcasting was unimaginably difficult. My intelligence said that you little brat possessed the power to commune with all things. I played a small trick, lured you here, and had you help me out of my predicament. As expected, you did not disappoint me. For the effort you put into casting that spell, I'll let you die a little more painlessly later. My pupils contracted violently, so sealing the sect master inside the iceberg and forcing me to draw on the power of the stars to blast the mountain apart had all been to help it break the forbidden seal. What a vicious old demon! No problem. As long as the vital energy of heaven and earth was here, I was invincible. Meteoric fire, rain, world-destroying thunder, 10,000 wastes rending the void. Just die already! One top-grade spirit talisman after another flew toward the old demon's pus-dripping body, each carrying heaven-shaking might, exploding in a chain. Wonderful, wonderful! The demon threw back its head and laughed wildly. Its body seemed to be nourished by the attack and swelled several times larger, towering into the sky. Good little brat. It's been a long time since I've tasted such rich and delicious vital energy of heaven and earth. Hurry and send me more. I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave and froze in place. What kind of monster was this? Talisman attacks were actually useless against it. Little brat, why don't you dare attack anymore? I am still very hungry. Forget it. I'll go get it myself. It's been 100 years. I need to eat my fill. It turned away in disdain and inhaled sharply. The vital energy of heaven and earth compressed rapidly. Then it was forcibly twisted into a pillar of liquid and crazily sucked into its mouth. Holy shit. So this thing really did live by drinking the west wind, since I couldn't afford to mess with it. Better run. First, I turned and tried to carry the old man away, but one severed finger flew out from the demon's body, as huge as a roof beam, and slammed me hard to the ground. I spat out a mouthful of blood and lay there, unable to move. Behave yourself, little brat. The power inside you is somewhat interesting. Once I'm done eating, I'll come peel you open and have a look. At that moment, the old sect master spoke. Junior brother, are you all right? Senior brother, what exactly is this fiend? The vital energy of heaven and earth can't even hurt it. If I'm not mistaken, this is the Qi-Devouring Demon Ancestor that was sealed during the last demonic calamity. It feeds on the vital energy of heaven and earth and fears no spirit talisman. My heart shook. Ding! The system's voice rang out. Main quest completed 85%. Skill unlocked. Divine Talisman gathered. Origin. Hint: eliminate the Qi-Devouring Demon Ancestor to obtain the title of Divine Talisman Master. Junior brother, I know you're anxious, but don't be anxious yet. The old man continued, explaining. The Qi-Devouring Demon Ancestor lives as long as heaven and earth and is the ancestor of all demons. It fears no spirit talisman and can instead devour the vital energy within them. 100 years ago, the entire cultivation world joined forces to fight it. They used up the one and only divine talisman passed down for 1,000 years. Only then were they able to seal it. The two of us are absolutely not its match. I'll hold it back. You hurry and withdraw. Go back and gather the 6 sects to discuss this carefully. I shook my head. Senior brother, Therese, no need for that. As it happens, I also have a divine talisman. Use the transmission mirror to contact the 6 sects. I'll lead everyone in drawing a divine talisman together. A few breaths later. Ahem. Ahem. Everyone, if you can hear me, type 1. The joke was lame, but it could ease the pain. I struggled to stand, stared at the fiend greedily devouring Qi, and spat a mouthful of bloody saliva onto the ground. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth, and my expression turned solemn. Can you hear me, fellow cultivators of the cultivation world? I am Liang Tianqi of Yufu Sect. Right now, I am fighting the Qi-Devouring Demon Ancestor. If we fail, the demonic calamity will happen all over again. When that time comes, blood will flow like floating logs, and all living things will be plunged into misery. So, let us gather everyone's strength. Fight for ourselves. Fight for the entire cultivation world. Fight for justice. Everyone, raise your hands. Let me collect all of your spirit essence and send this thing on its way. If it wants war, then let there be war. When heaven and earth are in danger, cultivators stand at the front. After saying that, I bit my finger hard and slowly moved my arm through the air, using blood to draw stroke by stroke. The character human was complete. The spirit essence in my body was instantly drawn out, forming a sphere of light above my head. Beside me, the old man shakily raised both hands. Spirit essence floated out from his body and fused into the sphere of light above my head. At the same time, in every corner of the continent, 100,000 cultivators all raised their hands and sent out their natal spirit essence. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sphere of light swelled explosively and instantly finished gathering. Human from He I and Hue. Multitude. The spirit gathering, divine talisman. Gathered, origin. Break for me. With all my strength, I hurled the gathered, origin, divine talisman at the old demon. The old demon looked at the sphere of light, flying toward it in terror, spread both hands wide, and tried to resist, but in the face of a strike condensed from the spirit essence of all cultivators, it had no power to fight back. Red light shot into the heavens, and the demon turned to ashes. And just like that, the invincible demon ancestor was destroyed. Peace returned to the cultivation world. I completed the system quest and became the only divine talisman master on this continent.